Winston the Red Engine was an engine that lived on the island of Sodor. He was a kind engine. He was also mixed traffic. He could pull trucks and coaches very easily. It's been some time since Edward the Blue Engine was taken out of service, so he could rest. He did feel lonely, but luckily Winston would stop quite often to tell him the news. One day, Winston was done with work and was coming to visit Edward as usual. But then he saw something that made him ground to a halt. He stopped right outside the sheds where he found the big engines laughing at Edward. He overheard them say,
The driver won't use you again. He wants big, strong engine like us.
Winston could tell what the big engines were saying hurt Edward deeply. 'Cause deep down, Edward knew they were right. He hadn't been out for a long time, and it began to make him sad. Winston was disgusted by this and left without saying anything. He went to Wellsworth Station where he found Sodor's oldest engines waiting for him. Winston told them everything that the big engines had done to Edward. They listened, and they were not pleased.
I never liked those big engines. Always so arrogant and think they're so great. Look down on us smaller, older engines.
Lady, the oldest tank engine there, said in a very calm voice, Winston, something must be done. We're getting outnumbered by these engines. I never liked that 98462 that arrived. His aura is dark and familiar. We must do something before we get outnumbered and scrapped.
Agreed,
snapped Matthew. But what should we do? Said Adam worriedly. They all thought until Eagle got a really good idea. Yes, I could do that, he whispered to the others. I'll do it tomorrow. The next day, Winston woke up unusually early and pulled up next to the shed. And before the usual driver and fireman could come and start working on the engines, Winston said, Now, driver, now, fireman. Winston's crew started walking towards Edward. And dare I mention what they said? I think you could guess.
What's the matter? Are you feeling sad? Would you like to come out today? And Edward said, Oh yes, please. So the fireman lit the fire and made a nice lot of steam. Then the driver pulled the lever and Edward puffed away. And he blew his whistle. Look at me. 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 The other engines were very cross at being left behind, and away went Edward to get some coaches. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Look at me.
Winston grinned when he saw the expression of terror on the other engines' faces. But when the real driver and fireman came, he said that the other engines were bad. So the driver and fireman took him out too. "Peep, peep, look at me now," said Winston, smirking to the other engines. He didn't catch their expressions, but he knew that he felt them glaring at him. Thanks to Winston, Edward had the best day out ever. His pistons pumped and his boiler bubbled. Despite him not being out for a long time, he performed so well that the driver promised to take him out the next day. That night, Eagle pulled into the sheds where you heard the big engines talking.
I can't believe it!
Shrieked 98462.
They let that bucket of bolts out today! How's that possible?
"I know," said a visiting engine. "I just got here, but I could tell he has very little power." "You could say that again," said 98462. "Since he first got here, he was nothing but a piece of scrap." Gordon, who was sitting there, despite him still having his pride, he knew right from wrong, and he knew that 98462 was nothing more than a rude engine.
Edward's design, started Gordon, was okay in one point of time, but modernization came. But that doesn't make him any less of a useful engine than all of us, though his importance doesn't surpass me. After all, he's a little engine. I wouldn't expect him to help me in any type of way. At that point, 98462, 87546, and the visiting engine all poked up and started arguing back with Gordon. At that moment, Eagle pulled into the sheds. "I see we're talking about Edward," he smirked. "Well, speak of the devil, the driver said that he's taking him out tomorrow. What do you think of that, The bigger engines jumped. I was just saying," said Gordon. "I was just telling them that Edward is a useful fellow and he needs Oh, I see," said Eagle. "Well, I think it will be in your best interest to keep it that way," he said. The other engines didn't respond. They stayed quiet until night fell.
And he told the other engines in the shed that night, "I'm going out again tomorrow. What do you think of that, But he didn't hear what they thought, for he was so tired and happy that he fell asleep at once.
"Don't worry, little Edward. I'm going to pull the express tomorrow, then I'll show you how important I am." It's been some time since the green engine visited the island of Sodor from the LMER. But because he was new, that didn't make him good. He was rude and confident and always wanted things done his way, or he just wouldn't do it. And he would give Thomas or any tank engine that would be shunting his trains to do it in a very silly and random order, or else he just simply wouldn't pull the trains, much to the annoyance of whoever's sorting out his train. And although he was one of Sodor's more medium engines and wasn't big like Gordon or the big engines, his ego certainly surpassed all of them put together. And he liked to do things his own way, and whenever he felt threatened or outshined by any other engine, he would scream out condescending remarks. "Hey, you're going too fast, slow down. Ugh, you big engines are too fat." Gordon, despite displaying a lot of confidence, occasionally got hurt and fed up with his nonsense. But thankfully, his reign on Sodor was short-lived, as by 1923, all the loaned engines were sent back to their railways. This was brought to his attention. "I just don't understand, 87546, he moaned. "I brought greatness to this railway, and I might end up being sent back to that scrap iron of a railway. How can I prove that I deserve to be here?" "Why don't you just show them that you're supposed to be here?" said 87546. He was his only friend, alongside 98462 and 76626. "What a brilliant idea," he steamed and puffed away. The next day, he woke up bright and early, giggling at his plan. "What a clever plan! What a clever plan!" he groaned. Thomas was arranging the express for Gordon when he got a really big surprise. The green engine pulled up next to him. "Ah, I hope you're done with my coaches," he said snobbishly. Thomas was confused. "Coaches?" he scoffed. "No, you're due to pull a freight train today. Sir Topham Hatt's orders." Ah, there must have been a change of plans. He swept right past the sheds just now and told me that the express train was for me. Thomas knew all about the green engine's lying behavior. "Oh yeah? Sure. Right, I don't believe you." The green engine was furious, but he tried to keep a straight face. "Then why am I up then, Isn't it a little out of the ordinary for me to be out and about this early, "That is a little odd," said Thomas. "There's a good lad," smirked the green engine. "Now off you go before you make me late. Chop, chop, get out of my way." Thomas simply rolled his eyes and puffed away. "Huh, idiot. I can't believe he actually fell for that," he smirked to himself. He moved quickly out of place and went over the points before anyone could wake up and tell him that he's pulling the wrong train. He ran over the points and backed onto the train. Make way! Make way!" he snobbishly said as he went down the line, and he gave the coaches a nasty bump. "Oh! Oh! 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 Oh!" they cried. "Now come on, coaches!" The guard blew his whistle, and the green engine smugly pulled away from the station. Without even asking if the coaches were ready or not, he just jerked forward. "Stop! Oh, we're not ready! They groaned. "Come on, don't be dramatic," he abusively said as he dragged them out of the station and out onto the open line. Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on," he panted. "Oh, we're coming, you wretched thing," growled the coaches. Later that day, Gordon came to collect the coaches for his express. But then he found a very unpleasant surprise waiting for him. A long and very dirty goods train. Gordon was shocked. "Thomas, that can't be right. You know I pull the express train all the time. Why do you have some very dirty trucks? And where's my express train?" he asked. "It switched. You're supposed to be taking his dirty freight train, and he takes your express. Confirmed by Sir Topham Hatt. Gordon felt like he had a heart attack, but then he realized that's impossible since he doesn't have a heart. Then he began to wonder if he was normal. But he was also very furious that he had to take a very dirty freight train, which was below him. And to make him even angrier than he already was, he was facing the wrong way, so he had to go back and find a turntable so he could be right side around so he could take the freight train. Meanwhile, he was streaming down the line with the express. That was until he reached the final station where a really firm figure was waiting for him. 66249. What are you doing with the express? And why is Gordon pulling your goods train? Well, sir, I actually don't care. I will meet you at the sheds. Ugh, I knew this day would come. The green engine sulkily went to the sheds without another word. But when he reached the sheds, he saw 4 angry faces glaring at him. It was, of course, Gordon, Edward, and Thomas, and they were livid. Sir Topham Hatt wasn't too happy himself. 66249, he bellowed. You have caused nothing but trouble since you first arrived. You're rude, spoiled, and selfish, and hard-headed, and think that your way is always best, and you've been nothing but rude to us since you first arrived. You are nothing like my purchases that actually worked out well. Look at these 3 engines behind me. Look at how different they are compared to you. You are a wannabe express engine, but you're not an express engine. You are a rude, selfish shunter. Look at Gordon, a real express engine. He's very pompous at times, but he's still kind and makes it easy to run a railway, since he's so fast and strong, pulling the express without fail. Edward's one of my firstest engines to arrive on this railway. Because of his age, engines like you like to pick on him. But does he care? No. He does his work no matter what. And I need that in an engine. And then there's Thomas. Although he arrived the same time as Edward, he's definitely way more immature than him. But his immaturity doesn't stop him from being a really useful engine. Ah, Winston, perfect timing. Now, I bought you in 1912, a long time ago, as an experimental engine from the LYR. You are an experiment, Winston, but you are a really useful engine. You're old, you're wise, and you're savvy. You're really useful and use your wisdom to help out the younger engines. That is really useful. And today, 66249, you sprayed dark smoke all over his lovely red paint. It is clear that you are nothing but a prideful express engine. But sir, I didn't come up with this plan. 87546 told me. I know, I had a stern talking to with him. But it's your fault for following his orders. And I spoke with him. He didn't tell you to steal the express. He just said to make yourself stand out from the rest. That's not what you did. You stole the express. It was your choice to steal the express. 87546 is punished, but you are in trouble. But sir, I was only trying to improve this godforsaken— Shut up! You are rude. Now get out of here. Return back to the LNER at once. Without another word, he slipped quietly and furiously away without saying another word, while all of the engines just glared at him. But the moment he left, Gordon felt a pain in his safety valve. But I needn't say more, or else I shall spoil the next story.
has been some time since Henry was let out of the tunnel. He was very proud of his smart new paint. He chose blue to look like Edward and Gordon. Henry was greeted warmly, which made him feel very comfortable. Most of the engines were very happy of Henry's return. Especially Gordon, when the two finally reunited. Needless to say, all of the engines were very happy that Henry was back on the railway and was put back in service. Well, almost all. Of course, in life there are always haters. In this case, there were three. 98462, 87546, and 76624 were all quite disgusted of Henry's return. But Henry never seemed to notice, or if he did, he simply didn't care. One day, Henry was resting on a siding. The local train was heavier than usual, so he was looking forward to getting a good rest before his next train. But then the three spiteful engines slid into the yard. They all surrounded Henry. The slyest of the bunch, 98462, pulled up. "Why, hello there," he said. Henry was surrounded by three spiteful engines. Can I help you?" he asked, confused. "Yes, but let us introduce ourselves first. I'm 98462. That's 87546. And the red engine is none other than the great 76624. Aren't we the most graceful engines you've ever seen?" "Oh, I know all about you," said Henry. "I heard all about you from Edward." "Oh, Edward. You mustn't believe everything that Steampot tells you." "Steampot?" said Henry. "That's exactly how he described you. A vicious steampot." "Oh, who cares about what Edward said? It's all about the big engines. He's just a little engine. What did Gordon say about us?" "Gordon said you're so non-existent to him, he would have literally no reason to bring you up in further conversations." "Oh, I'm sure he was just joking." "Anyway, we're here with a deal, an agreement for you." "What type of deal?" asked Henry. "How would you like to join our big engines group? We are going to bring this railway to its knees. This railway needs us. We don't need it. We're going to dominate, change, destroy in our own image. You're a prototype too, I believe. Cross between an LNER A1 and an Atlantic. Join us, Henry. We will rule this railway." Henry stared into 98462's eyes. No thank you," he said. "I don't want to dominate a railway. I just want to pull trains. What type of idiot would want to dominate a railway of all things? Join us in the 90th century, 98462. Then Henry puffed away, laughing rudely. "Ugh, 98462, said 87546. "What are we going to do with the blue runt? Gordon's already hesitant of joining us, and now him of all engines." "Don't fret, my dear brothers. We don't need him. We're only looking to recruit new members. But mark my words, he will pay for what he said to us. I'm going to teach him a lesson. And here's how we're going to do it. 98462 whispered his plan to his colleagues. We'll do it tomorrow. Henry will look silly, and Gordon will be so heartbroken he will come crawling to us. The three laughed as they puffed back to the sheds. It is Henry's job to pull the first train of the day. At first, he treated everyone with respect and was very, very gentle and kind to the coaches. But soon enough, things started to change. Henry started to loudly let off steam inside of the station and loudly blast his whistle before leaving. It frequently scared anyone that was close to him. But Henry would just laugh and puff away before anyone could call him back and say what a bad engine he was. Henry streamed down the line, pretending to be like Gordon. By the way that I'm going, I should take over the express, said Henry. Little did Henry realize that his behavior was being monitored by 98462, 87546, and 76624. One day, Edward, Gordon, and Henry were chatting in the sheds when 98462 barked in. Gordon, he said, stay away from him. You shouldn't want to talk to an engine like him. Gordon looked unfazed. What are you talking about, you LNER nutjob? Didn't you see him fly down the line, pretending to be you? It's so sad how desperate he is, wanting to pull a passenger train to look like you. Why else do you think that he chose the color blue over his spectacular LNER livery? To be like you. He wants to be you, Gordon. And soon enough, he's going to replace you and be the one to have you scrapped. 87546 chimed in. Yes, Gordon. I heard him just the other day saying how he should replace you as the NWR Express engine. How quaint. Gordon scoffed in disbelief, then looked over at Henry, who looked rather pale. Henry, said Gordon, that's not true, is it? Well, it's not exactly true, said Henry. But Gordon didn't let him finish. He shot him one disappointed look, then stormed out of the sheds, not forgetting to blow steam at Henry. Everyone watched Gordon calmly leave the sheds as he went to go spend the night at Tidmouth. 98462, 87546, and 76624 all smirked as they watched Gordon leave the sheds. Their plan was working just fine. Late that night, Gordon slunk into the sheds. He was glad it was partially empty. Thomas, Lady, and Eagle were all waiting for him with a confused look on their faces. Hello, Gordon, teased Thomas. What's the matter? You were afraid of the dark, so you came running to sleep with your little tank engine? But Gordon didn't answer. He was too cross. Hopefully one day Gordon will realize that it was all the troublesome trio's lies and tricks. But that's another story. The next day, Henry woke up with a start to his driver's voice. "Wake up, Henry," he said. "You have to take your first train of the day." "Pooh," Henry retorted. "It's too early. I don't want to leave my nice warm shed," he said sulkily. "Sorry, but Sir Topham Hatt's orders." "Puh," said Henry. "Fine," he said after letting off steam rudely. "I'll go. Just stop nagging me and wait for me to wake up." With a very ugly yawn, Henry puffed wearily out of the sheds. "Why me? Why me?" he grumbled as he left the nice warm shed. He didn't notice the three troublesome trios smirking at him. Meanwhile, Gordon the big engine was waiting at the station to pull the express, as Henry backed down onto his coaches. Henry glanced over and saw Gordon. He tried to be casual and blew his whistle as a hello. He was shocked when Gordon actually whistled back. "He's not mad at me. That means he actually does believe me," Henry said. But it turned out Gordon was only whistling to let the guard know he was ready to leave. He didn't even acknowledge Henry was there. And with a loud whistle, a pompous look, and a lot of express coaches, Gordon stormed out of the station. Without even looking in Henry's direction, Henry sadly watched the express depart. He felt helpless, but all he did was just blow his whistle and sadly depart with his train. Gordon was deeply hurt of what Henry did, or at least what he thought he did, but tried his best not to show it and move on with his activities. Despite Gordon's negative opinion on Henry, this didn't affect how he treated others generally. He still had great respect for Eagle and Edward, and was still quite annoyed, but still friendly towards Thomas. And he still kept his distance from 98462, 87546, and 76624. He still didn't trust them, and found them rude and obnoxious. One day, Gordon was bragging to Edward of how fast he was going with the express, while Edward was holding on to his sanity for dear life, when Henry came along. "Hello, Edward," said Henry in his normal cheerful voice. "How are you?" "I'm fine," said Edward uncomfortably. He was very aware of the feud between Henry and Gordon. Henry looked over cheerfully at Gordon. "Hello, Gordon," he said. "How are you doing this fine day?" Gordon ignored Henry and looked over at Edward, looking uncomfortable. I'll talk to you later," he said. Of course," said Edward. Gordon then left. Henry felt depressed. "Are you okay, Henry?" asked Edward. "No, Edward," said Henry sadly. "I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Since 98462 and 87546 told those lies about me, things have been different between me and Gordon. He doesn't trust me. He hates me." "He doesn't hate you," said Edward. "Really, Edward?" said Henry. "Are you that old and blind? Are you that old that you're blind already? Can't you see that he clearly hates me?" "Sorry," said Henry. Ah, listen, Henry. You should give Gordon some time to think. Give him some time for him to realize that what those spiteful engines say about you isn't the full truth. Please, just give him some space for him to breathe a little. If he's a true friend, he'll come around. Well, anyway, bye, said Edward. He hoped that he had talked some sense into Henry, because if he continued, Gordon might have strangled him with his buffers. But Henry wasn't going to let Gordon go that easily. He knew what he had to do. He would try his very hardest to be Gordon's friend, and to try to tell him that what the spiteful engine said wasn't the full truth. So whenever Gordon was resting on a siding or was in an area alone, Henry was sure to show up and try to start a conversation with him. Much to Gordon's dismay, he would frequently try to run away from Henry, hoping that soon the big engine would realize that Gordon just wanted to be alone, aka away from him. Unfortunately, 98462, 87546, and 76624 saw this and came up with a plan to teach Henry a lesson for bothering Gordon. The next morning, a strange man came to Henry. "Henry," he said, "the Fat Controller told me to tell you to come through the station, 'cause there's a special train he wants you to pull." "I haven't been informed of a special train," said Henry. "Please just come," said the strange man. "All right, don't fuss, I'm coming," grumbled Henry. Henry's driver opened the regulator, and Henry puffed away, starting for the station. Henry raced down the line, suspecting nothing. Gordon was sitting at Nefford Station thinking about what he should do with Henry, when suddenly he heard his whistle and looked over, and he saw a freight train parked on the line that Henry was going. Gordon was frantic. He blasted his whistle loud to try to warn Henry. But Henry was too conceited to notice. "Gordon's only whistling at me because I'm such a smart engine. Let me whistle back. Woo-hoo!" But then Henry saw the freight train up ahead. It was on his line. "Oh no," Henry said. "Stop! Stop, driver!" he yelled. His driver slammed on the brakes, but the wet sleet from the rails began to make his wheels slide. He shut his eyes and waited for the crash. Somehow, no one was hurt. The guard jumped out of the brake van before Henry crashed into it. But Henry and the brake van were in horrible condition. The van was in smithereens, but Henry's funnel and front were badly damaged. Henry's buffers were damaged from the crash, but Henry's funnel was damaged by the rocks. Winston was then called to help sort out the mess and take Henry to the works to be repaired. As Henry was being taken away to the works, something in Gordon didn't feel right. Somehow, he suspected foul play, but at that moment, he saw 98462 scamper by with a freight train. I wonder if that B-12 is up to something, he said to himself. Gordon didn't know what to think, but he did know one thing for sure. He should watch his back and keep his eyes on those spiteful engines before they strike next. The next morning, a strange man came to Henry. "Henry," he said, "the Fat Controller told me to tell you to come through the station, 'cause there's a special train he wants you to pull." "I haven't been informed of a special train," said Henry. "Please just come," said the strange man. "All right, don't fuss, I'm coming," grumbled Henry. Henry's driver opened the regulator, and Henry puffed away, starting for the station. Henry raced down the line, suspecting nothing. Gordon was sitting at Nefford Station thinking about what he should do with Henry, when suddenly he heard his whistle and looked over, and he saw a freight train parked on the line that Henry was going. Gordon was frantic. He blasted his whistle loud to try to warn Henry. But Henry was too conceited to notice. "Gordon's only whistling at me because I'm such a smart engine. Let me whistle back. Woo-hoo!" But then Henry saw the freight train up ahead. It was on his line. "Oh no," Henry said. "Stop! Stop, driver!" he yelled. His driver slammed on the brakes, but the wet sleek from the rails began to make his wheels slide. He shut his eyes and waited for the crash. Somehow, no one was hurt. The guard jumped out of the brakeman before Henry crashed into it. But Henry and the brakeman were in horrible condition. The van was in smithereens, but Henry's funnel and front were badly damaged. Henry's buffers were damaged from the crash, but Henry's funnel was damaged by the rocks. Winston was then called to help sort out the mess and take Henry to the works to be repaired. As Henry was being taken away to the works, something in Gordon didn't feel right. Somehow, he suspected foul play. But at that moment, he saw 98462 scamper by with a freight train. "Hey, Eagle," Thomas said one day. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," said Winston. "What is it? Why does Gordon have square buffers?" "Well," Winston began, "when Gordon first arrived, as you know, he had circular buffers, just like me and you. Despite it looking like all the other engines, for some reason Gordon thought they were the best circular buffers ever." After one day when he was returning back from the works, after his safety valve burst, he entered the station showing off as usual. He wasn't looking where he was going, nor did he realize how fast he was going. Too late, he saw in horror that he was heading straight for the buffers at the end of the station. "Ooh-wah," he groaned. "Help!" He shut his eyes and crashed straight through the wall and the buffers, smashing them all to pieces. As usual, no one was hurt, but Gordon's front was badly bent, and his lamp irons were pretty destroyed. Not to mention the giant hole in the wall traumatized any passing passengers. But physically, no one was hurt. Mentally, not really. Later, Winston to clean up Gordon's mess. "Are you alright, Gordon?" asked Winston. "Just get me out," grunted Gordon. "Alright, just checking." With much pull power, heaving and hauling, and Winston's face turning as red as his paint, he was able to pull the big LNER Pacific out of the wall. Gordon didn't say a word after he was pulled out, and sent immediately to the works. Gordon later came back with a new look, square buffers, which made him pretty furious because he despised them at first. But then he later learned to love them, being the only engine on the railway to have square buffers. And let's just say he maybe enjoyed them a little bit too much. "Huh," said cheeky Thomas. "So you're basically telling me that the Grand Engine Gordon got a gift for being careless?" "Well, yeah, that's basically it." Good to know that bad behavior can get rewarded," smirked Thomas. Eagle and Thomas both laughed. Little did they know, they were being watched. "I wonder if that B-12 is up to something," he said to himself. Gordon didn't know what to think, but he did know one thing for sure. He should watch his back and keep his eyes on those spiteful engines before they strike next.